You may recall the Palisades fire was just a little over a year ago. The entire neighborhood burned down because the city of Los Angeles and the state of California could not get the water meter or the fire hydrants to work nor the reservoirs filled. Yet they could pass the anti-Nick Shirley Act in record time. Here to help us sort it out is Dan Perkins. You may recall that he co-authored the book with Sheriff Mack, who we had on just a week ago. The book titled Democratic Murder of America. Boy, we're witnessing it in real time right before our very eyes, aren't we, Dan? Welcome to the truth.
It's amazing because the sheriff and I talk about every other day, and we look at the news and we look at what we predicted and what we've talked about on the book, and it's like everybody knew what we were writing about because they were almost quoting it verbatim out of the book. One of the challenges, John, we had is we were fighting to find a stopping point. There were so many stories about the corruption and violence of the Democratic Party. We just said, could we do one more? Could we do one more? And finally, we said, look, we got to get this thing published, and we'll do a 2017 edition, but or 27 edition. But we've got to get this thing going now, and it's been very well received. And the Shirley situation, which I think is very important to the First Amendment, we have a section in Democrats Murder of America. We have a section that basically duplicates what he did. We're working with Your News, a news website, and they've created what they call a special situation where people can become citizen reporters. And we're working with them to put a citizen reporter in each congressional district to interview the candidates, regardless of party. And we gave them the first 2 questions to ask. And they're wonderful questions because they're complex, but they're simple. The first question is, are you as a congressman or a senator, are you comfortable with the level of crime rate in our city, our state, and the nation? There's only 3 answers: yes, no, or I don't know. Well, I can't imagine anybody saying they're happy with the crime rate. And so that comes down to no or I don't know. And if you answer I don't know, then I don't know why we should support you for candidate when you can't tell us about one of the most important issues is personal safety. 40% of Americans are afraid to go out of their houses after 9. And so Americans don't feel safe, even though the crime rate in some areas is coming down. And so we asked those reporters, and when they get to the I don't know, we're going to ask them, can you tell us 3 things that you're going to do over the next 12 months to try and have an impact on the crime rate in our country? And we'll watch you and we'll monitor you. And 12 months from now, if you haven't fulfilled your 3 promises, we're not going to support you for re-election. The second question deals with a very emotional issue. And that question is, Mr. Candidate, Miss Candidate, are you comfortable with the level of rape in our community, in our state, and in the nation? Same 3 questions. Answers: yes, no, I don't know. Nobody's going to say yes. And a person who says, I don't know, he knows what's going to happen because we're not going to support him. And so what we're doing, John, is we're reviving a very interesting historical perspective on the American citizen involved. And that was when we went through the time that the Tea Party was created, because people were afraid to talk and were afraid to mention to anybody their personal beliefs about what was going on in the country, and they became what is called the silent majority. Well, we're asking the silent majority, you want something to do? Here's something that you can do right away. You can go to Your News, sign up and become a citizen reporter. You got the questions, go out and start interviewing the candidates and report back what they're saying.
Yeah, we had the founder of Your News on The Truth. We've had him on a couple of times.
Yep.
It's a very inventive platform, and it really does take the power away from the mainstream media. and
No
give it to
question.
local reporter, just like it used to be in the good old days
Right.
when you had beat reporters covering the courthouse and the Little League field. So walk us through this anti-Nick Shirley Act that was just passed in California. I mean, I've never seen anything or heard anything like it. It is a shock to the conscience like nothing I've ever seen. Your thoughts?
I totally agree with you, John. And what happened is the governor and members of the state legislature became very enraged that this guy with a cell phone, all he had is a cell phone and himself, and he went in and started asking questions and started getting information of at least $20 billion worth of fraud in the state of California, and started writing articles, much like he did in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And they were really angry because they are accountable to that 20 billion, which I think will ultimately be more than that. And he began to raise questions that were starting to embarrass the governor and the state legislature. And so they said, well, we don't have to put up with this. We're going to change the law, and he can't do that anymore. Well, the states cannot amend the Constitution. The freedom of speech and the freedom of the press is part of the Constitution of the United States. States could only vote on an amendment to change the Constitution. They can't just pass laws and say, we're not going to follow this constitutional privilege. So it's going to court, no question about it. But I think when it gets to the Supreme Court is going to easily side with Shiley. I mean, he's doing his job as a reporter. He's part of what the original founding fathers wanted was called the Fourth Estate. And he's trying to hold the legislature and the governor accountable under the Fourth Estate concept that our founders put in place. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to have the federal government come in, talk to counselors who are dealing with illegal aliens. They don't want any of that, and they don't want any reporting of that. So they're trying to kill his constitutional right of freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
Well, I've read the act in part, and it is on its face ambiguous and overly broad, and it is clearly designed simply to chill the free speech of a reporter, in this case, Nick Shirley, and others that may be emulating him. They claim that by going to a NGO, a non-governmental organization, mm-hmm. and reporting on what they're doing is the same as doxing the people that are behind it. And they're under that premise, you can then sue the reporter for $4,000 per event. Mm-hmm. So don't you think it's going to take an awfully long time for this to work its way through the courts? It seems to me that it is a stopgap measure designed to stop the freedom of the press and the freedom of speech just between now and the midterm elections, because I'm pretty sure that it will be struck down for going against the First Amendment, as you correctly point out, but also being so unconstitutionally vague that no one would know what activity is permitted and what activity is not. But it could take months, a year, maybe 2 years for it to work its way up the courts. There's first got to be a lower court decision that is appealable to the U.S. Supreme Court. That in itself could take a year and a half or 2 years. Right.
The important thing, John, that I want to point out is that in the book, the Democratic Murder of America, what we're saying is we've written a history book. This is not nonfiction. This is not fiction. This is nonfiction. It's all stipulated with fact and illustrations and notification of where we got this information. You have to understand that from its very foundings in 1820, the Democratic Party has used surrogates to intimidate in the 1800s Black people, especially after they started their freedom of slavery, make slaves free, and then the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And so they got all these, they created the Ku Klux Klan to intimidate. Then they got the Jim Crow laws and all kinds of other things that were designed to intimidate Black people. And in the Jim Crow laws, which ended in the 1950s, in the period of time of the effect of the Jim Crow laws, almost 4,000, and it's probably much more than this, John, but 4,000 Black men being hung has been reported. But what most people don't know, and this is one of the things that we do in this book, we bring out things that a lot of things never heard of. While those 4,000 Black men were being hung, the Northern abolitionists were sending missionaries into the South to work with Black people to help them get their rights and deal with all the problems they were having. In the same time period that 4,000 Black men were hung, 1,200 white abolitionist Republicans, let me say that again, white abolitionist Republicans were also hung.
It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold, protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky, tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy. Today's broadcast is brought to you in part by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in North Georgia. They will sanitize the front of the house, the back of the house, remove your waste vegetable oil, clean your grease trap, and your vent hoods. If you're tired of slow, inconsistent, unreliable, and dirty service from your provider, check out PCRenergy.com. They're in Atlanta, no automated attendance, and they'll give you a quick response. PCRenergy.com, where you get to speak to a live person, no automated attendance, and they give clean, good, reliable service, locally owned and operated in Atlanta. It's www.pcrenergy.com. Let's just call it for what it is. This is straight out of the pages of a communist state. A communist regime, a fascist regime, penalizes and is punitive towards people who criticize the government. And this is a blatant attempt to punish people who criticize the leadership in California, who have not only allowed but enabled billions upon billions of fraud to take your money and mine that we've worked for, that we pay taxes on, and abuse our not only our money, but also our good faith in government. I think it is an atrocity that has to be arrested immediately and stopped in its foot tracks.
Yep.
How do we do it?
Well, our citizen reporters as journalists is one way. Getting involved in your local Republican Party, to talking. One of the things we've already told the Republican Party in the book, we're talking about creating what they call a commercial edition of the book, which is a small paperback that they can buy from us at no profit to us, but you can give them away and start giving them the information to help them be able to deal with the crap that they're getting from the Democratic Party. And they don't want this to happen, but we want to be able to bring the ability of the American people who love this country and love the Constitution and the Declaration to keep it, to keep their freedoms and especially their freedom of speech.
You know, people have their hair on fire, rightfully so, that John Thune will not bring the SAVE Act floor of the United States Senate after it's been passed by the House of Representatives 4 times. And in spite of the fact that 85% of Americans favor its passage. Now, I have a slightly different take on it. Make no mistake, I'm all in favor of passing the SAVE Act, but I think it's totally unnecessary. The Constitution of the United States of America says in plain English, unequivocally, that you have to be a citizen of this country in order to vote. So what is going to be achieved by passing one more law that requires people to be a citizen of the country in order to vote if they're not going to bring enforcement actions against people who violate the law? I make the same argument with respect to insider trading in Congress. I mean, I'm not in favor of a law to restrict congressional members of Congress from trading stocks. I think that is a unnecessary burden to impose on people who are already making a huge sacrifice to leave their family and their homes to go to Washington to serve their constituents. It's just the world according to John, okay? Just enforce the laws that already exist. Everyone, you, me, a congressman, are prohibited by law from trading on insider information. Just enforce the law. But passing a new law to me feels somewhat like a sham. They are once again giving us hope that something will change, but they will continue to violate the new law like they're violating the current law, just like they're going to violate the SAVE Act if it passes, because they're violating the current Constitution of the United States. To what end? When are we going to have real accountability in this country? When are the American people going to stand up, join hands, and say, no more, enough?
I totally agree with you, John. What we need is we need to have people to understand how evil the Democratic Party is. And you're right. I think that the good, honest, and true American citizens don't understand why the Republicans always go to jail and the Democrats always get off. And that's true.
I think I am developing a working thesis that something is very awry inside our own country. I truly suspect that there are subversive forces that are working inside the borders of the United States to destroy this country. I truly believe that. I see it everywhere I look. And I think that Democrats have become their proxies, with notable exceptions. I don't think every Democrat is evil or demonic, but I think that probably the majority of Democrats fall into that category because they play it out over and over and over again. I mean, just look at what we're talking about. The California legislature have passed a law that censors and chills free speech, like people from Nick Shirley, who has done nothing wrong except expose their fraud. And I think they're in on it. I think that the money, they're so violently opposed to allowing this news to get to the American people because a lot of the money is ending up in their hands. That's what I suspect, with a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Right. I agree.
Gun.
I agree with you. I think that the American people, the Democrats have been controlling the news, controlling what gets out, stifles any criticism, whatever, either internally or from outside. The control of the mainstream media affects what they're going to let get out. And if you understand, there's a chapter, I think it's chapter 9, and it has an interesting title. The chapter is Danger Ahead.
Mm.
Okay, and it's a story about the left in the Democratic Party being driven by white females, college educated, from 18 to 39. And it's an analysis based on survey data and medical data that many of these women who are involved in this process, and they're the leaders of the process. Whenever you look at photographs and go on Google and look at photographs of the protests going all the way back to COVID. And you look at the leadership, the people who are out front with the megaphones, all white women. Very few men out there yelling and screaming at the police and everybody else. Most of these protests are all orchestrated by the dangerous white chicks ahead. And they hate this country. And I know that if they hate it so much, they should leave, but they know that the alternatives to go somewhere else in the world is
worse.
It's going to be
so
worse.
they want to bring us down for reasons that
right.
I understand. Well, Dan, Father Time has caught up with us. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you and Sheriff Mack for what you're doing to try and awaken the American people, and for all your volunteerism on coming on shows like ours to spread this word. We're very grateful to you, and keep up the good work. Dan Perkins, co-author of the book, Democratic Murder of America.
And the book is available at murderofamerica.com, and it's just got a brand new audio book, which is terrific. So thanks, John, for having me on.
And I have the book on my bedside table and am enjoying reading it. And it is a real eye opener, and will cause you to become alert to what is going on around us. And that is The Truth. I'm John Gordon, and Dan Perkins. Keep up the good work. Thanks for coming on The Truth. Have a great day.